Hello, I'm Joel Blackford with Beth Hesed Sabbath Fellowship. This is a special midweek get together because today is Yom Teruah. It is the day of blowing a trumpet like for war or battle. And so we're trying to give you the right information about what's going on. We're going to try to talk about this debate. So you could call us if you want to, but don't show up in the building because it's locked. We do the philosophy of eschatology, what you need to know, your reality, our existence. It's the story behind the story. We try not to be disparate. If you want good news, in terms of newspaper news, John Haller does the best job out there, I believe. We're Beth Hesed Sabbath Fellowship, and we do something different. We're talking about Judgment Day. Is it actually Judgment Day 2022? Well, guess what? I'm still here. You are still there, and so we need to figure out what's going on. Why did everybody else celebrate the 25th, which is the calculated day? And why did I and many others now, it's growing in size, celebrate last night, which is 2 days off? Why? Well, part of the reason is Deborah Gordon. She runs Deborah's Date Tree. And Nehemiah Gordon, her husband, they both live in Israel but minister with Michael Rood. Not one of my favorites, but you know what? He's a good enough guy. He actually preached in Duluth, Minnesota, and then Minneapolis. I was not a Messianic at that point in time, so I don't remember him from here. Um, He's about a decade older than me. The main thing is that Nehemiah is a brilliant man. He's a little bit arrogant, but he is brilliant. I'll give him that. And Deborah seems to be a nice lady, and so she's his wife. And they've been looking for the new moons for a period of time now. And this group of people observing with them is growing, and we love what they're doing. So it's intriguing that he didn't put it under his name. He put it under his wife's name, but that's fine. I don't care. So, dear friends, we just got back from looking for the new moon. At the time of this writing, we are not aware of any positive naked eye sightings from Israel this evening on the 26th. So on the 25th, the 26th, so then they came back. And so why is it a difficult observation? Well, you have to look for an illumination of 0.52% and a lag time of 30 minutes. So, okay, so they've got this down. And Nehemiah is a brilliant man. I'm not kidding. He knows his Hebrew, he knows his Greek, he knows his Bible. He's not a believer in Yeshua, but he's brilliant, and he'll tell you that he knows more than you, which is fine too. So the end of the 29th day, so it has to occur by the end of the 30th day. So they knew that. So it must begin on sunset tomorrow, 27 September 2022 by default. Okay, lunar month can't be more than 30 days yet, but it's 29.530587981 days to revolve around the Earth. And so the end of the 29th day or the end of the 30th day of every month, it has to occur. We have to have the new moon. And it has to be a sighted sliver, because you wouldn't be sighting the midpoint where there's no light in the sky. I mean, how would you know that back in ancient Israel? God would tell you to look for the first sliver. And we'll discuss Yom Kippur later on, and that means hidden. Will you be looking again tomorrow evening? Yeah, they will be, but it doesn't matter. By default, we have to plan for the new moon, and it did occur, so they did find it, and so the dates are set. Yom Teruah is the 27th now, leading into the 28th right now. Yom Kippur is going to be the 6th, leading into the 7th. The first day of HaSukkot, which is the 12th, the 11th going into the 12th. These dates are pretty much set. So that's a good thing. At least we don't have to worry. Now, I have friends that said it's really cool. Why wait to observe the sighted new moon of Tishri? Because the suspense is part of the process. Think about it that way. That's kind of cool. I mean, you're literally saying God's in charge. The suspense is kind of fun. Imagine running around Israel, Jerusalem, the Temple Mount, waiting to sight this, and then everybody is excited. It's the anticipation, okay? You have to prepare and wait like a bridesmaid waiting for the groom. You need to submit once again to God, and it teaches you godly patience. So my buddy Joel Brazil said that. He's right. He's absolutely right. That was brilliant. So thank you, Joel. And he's been a friend for years, but that was insightful. Okay, so the main thing is, yes, I recommend Deborah's Date Tree and some of these other sighted moon sites, because it helps with the first month of the year, which would be Nisan Aviv, and then it helps with this month. And you want to get it right, especially for Yom Kippur's sake. Okay, so Why are we doing this? Because we want to keep the Bible, not the rabbis, but when the rabbis are right, we want to cite them because they do a lot more research than I do. And then prophecy. We want to get prophecy right. If we're going to be looking for the return of our king when the king is in the field, and that's Yeshua, well, we want to get that right. And then we want to know the news because the news, oh, it's horrific right now. I mean, oh, it's just it's flooding. It's like the hurricane down in Florida right now. Okay, so what time is it on God's clock? What time is it? Well, this is Yom Teruah. It doesn't say Rosh Hashanah. Now, I will give you the verses of how we know it's the turn of the year, and that'll be in a little bit here. But this is a rebuke of myself, so get ready for it. You won't hear it that often. What makes me appear to be silly and ridiculous at times is that I assumed the increasing birth pangs pace would quicken in 2016. I wrote my book according to that theology or eschatology, my assumed Shemitah year after the blood moon tetrad, of 2014, 2015. And I was wrong, okay, and I admit it. I assumed again in 2017 that it was the Jubilee year based on extensive research. I mean, I go back 2,000, well, 6,000 years, but 2,000, and I really come up with some great patterns research, but it's all circumstantial. Okay, nothing happened really in 2017 other than Trump saying Jerusalem is the home, okay, of Jerusalem, of Israel. Today, we notice tragic events are quickening in pace, no doubt about it. I mean, guys, it's off the Richter scale for bad stuff. You could do 2 hours a day on just how bad the news is. The fantasy of the pre-tribulation rapture remains alive and tempting for those that play with the scriptures. No doubt about it. I mean, I'm going to cite Jeffrey Grider later on in this video and how he really is he's whipping it up, and it's tiresome, people. It really is. You can't look for the rapture all the time. You can look for certain signs and notice patterns, but you need to back off and settle down. Otherwise, you're going to scare the people half to death. And I remain a man that warns of impending doom. I do, but lacking a specific idea of when that doom will occur. As I survey the world lately, the birth pangs are rapidly increasing in size and scope. Will we go back to normal? No, there is no normal anymore. But there will be a time of peace shalom between the contractions. Okay, so get used to that. So what time is it again? According to the calculated calendar, it was September 25th going into the 26th. It's actually 2 days off, so just keep that in mind. Everything else moves forward. Now, according to the rabbis, the Shemitah was a few years ago, and the rabbis in Israel kept it in the last year, so 2021 to 2022. So they're ending the Shemitah right now. I don't think they're going into the Jubilee, but you never know. I don't know. And so we are now in 5783, and it's the Shemitah. Are we days away from global economic destruction? Okay, so here's the problem. In these Shemitah years in the past, according to these calculations on the right-hand side, you go into Shemitahs and bad things happen. Well, not, not, well, okay, so 2014, 2015, not really, no. So we seem to be something off. Is a Jubilee calculated into any of these? No. So my 2016 Shemitah, really nothing. 2017 Jubilee, nothing. 2018, nothing. 2019, nothing. Yes, things were increasing, but I didn't sense anything that I could put into patterns. Now, sometimes you have to look back differently. Like, when was the Great Depression really, really bad? Well, it was 1934. So is that really a year of a Shemitah back there? No, not really. But it is interesting. So they cite the super Shemitah year of 1917. Yeah, that was probably more like a Jubilee. So that fits into that pattern. But anyway, my patterns are off, obviously. So I'm sitting around waiting for God to determine what the patterns are. Okay, that's what I'm doing. So what time is it? I'm waiting on God. Okay, now this guy, this is all Israel news, probably a bunch of Christians, which is fine. They can call themselves Israel. The red heifer sacrifice could take place in 1 year in Jerusalem. That's kind of a prediction, guys. What time is it? I don't know. I don't know if they're going to sacrifice these Texas red heifers in Israel next year. They only need one, okay? But it is interesting that it occurred, and they want them to be 2 years old. So very interesting, okay? That's the Parah Adumah. So Parah would be red, and Adumah is kind of red too, but it's from the earth, earth red. Jewish farmers on the Sabbath year, yep, looks like they ended Sunday at sundown, and so did a Sabbath year for the land. So they took the Sabbath year off. So what time is it? That's their Sabbath. I don't know if that's the Sabbath or not. I don't know. But when we look back in retrospect, we might get it right. So, will we be sacrificing the red heifer next year? I don't know. When's the Sabbath year? I don't know. My theory going back is that there's the prophecy of Daniel 9:24 through 27 that talks about the 490 years that's broken up into pieces and things like that, and the four different kingdoms. So you had these, you had the kingdoms of Nebuchadnezzar, which was Babylon, then Cyrus, which was Medo-Persia, then Alexander, which was Greece, then Caesar, Rome, and then, but those things seem to fit forward into 490-year segments, going from 70 AD to 560. I'd rather call it Common Era, obviously, because it's more accurate. Because AD, but he was probably Yeshua, born in 4 Common Era, okay? Before the Common Era, rather. So it's from 70 to 560, Justinian won. We had plagues right towards the end there, and then he hated the Jews, and he had his Justinian decree, and then we had the Justinian plagues, and by 560 he was dying, and that seems to be the end of that first segment where you have the last Roman dying. Okay. Then when you move forward from 560 to 1050, you have the legs splitting like the statue in Daniel 2. Okay. And that's when Pope Benedict IX was horrific. I mean, this was as bad of a pope as you could ever find. I don't want to even describe it. It's so bad. But anyway, the legs split. Then you move forward, and from 1050 to 1540, keep in mind, Suleiman the Magnificent never really went down to Mecca, Medina, or Jerusalem. He never rebuilt the walls himself. He had lions tell him to go send men down there to do it. And so he sent cash down that he extracted through war in Europe. He was almost going to invade and win in Austria, but he lost. He did well up there. He did very, very well. Anyway, what's the point of the story? These lions told him, and this is Allah telling him, actually, to go send men and money down to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem. So when you're looking at the last sequence where the beast kicks in, that takes you up to 2030, which is the next date that's very interesting. And he sealed those eastern gate walls, especially the Golden Gate. And you can see there's a plaque there and everything that he sealed it up. And that fulfills eventually the prophecy of Ezekiel 44 1 through 3, and so it's that gate is only for the Mashiach, only for the prince in that text, but really the Mashiach. And so it's very interesting to see these time frames, these 490-year time frames, and that's kind of 2,000 years encapsulated into 4 different time frames. Very interesting. So what are we talking about going forward? Is Rosh Hashanah Yom haDin? According to Aleph Beta, and these are great researchers, it's not. Okay, the king is in the field, no doubt about it. Okay, prayers for the king, and it's really only in the Mishnah too, and I'll show you the Mishnah verses in a little bit here from another source. Now, the prayers are to remember, but the remembering is really coming out of Egypt. Okay, and that's from Numbers 10. And so you'll see the remember coming up in a slide coming forward here. And also remember, Yom Kippur is in 10 days, and the king is in the field, and he's going to judge. Now, he may evaluate you on, it's technically the turning of the year, but we'll call it Yom Teruah because that's what it says in the Bible. So then prayers for shofarim. So that would be plural of shofar. And are we supposed to blow a teruah a war call, a battle call? Is this talking about Gog, the Gog war? So the verses that we have here is Hashem spoke unto Moshe, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the seventh month, on the first day of the month, you shall have a Sabbath, a Zikron, so that's the remember part, Zikron, Teruah, which is a war call, a Mikra Kodesh, according to Mark Biltz, and I love Mark, that is a dress rehearsal. Okay, that's fine. So we're supposed to have a holy dress rehearsal. So Mikra means dress rehearsal. You shall do no work, no avodah, which is work therein, but you shall have an offering made by fire unto Hashem. So that's Nola. Okay, that's fine. That's Leviticus 23 through 25. So that's what we're supposed to do, but it doesn't say judgment. It doesn't say judgment day. We'll find that in the Mishnah later on. We'll just see what your opinion is. Quite simply, biblically, teruah means one silver trump. Okay, so basically, I'm going back to Numbers 10 here. One silver trumpeter's blast for leaders only, and two blasts for all the people. So two different people blasting these silver kaseh, oh goodness, silver zotzerot. Okay, and so in the Hebrew, so teruah blasts are warnings for war or battle. They are. Okay, when you sound the teruah, then the camp shall move forward, sound a second teruah, then the machanot, the camp on the south, shall set out, and so it's sound the teruah for their settings out. So okay, so they're kind of marching out to war, people. Okay, you're not going to war in your camp. You're going to war, and that's what they were doing as they were coming in. So it was a war call, battle call. One of them for the leaders only, two people blasting for all the people. Okay, fine, two or more. And you, if the kahal, the church, it's the believers, is to be gathered together, you shall sound it, but you shall not sound the teruah. So what are they saying in verse 7? No teruah when you gather together. So if you're going to church or you're going into the assembly, don't blast a war call, because it's not a war call. When the children of Aaron, the Kohanim, shall sound the zotzerot, that's that silver trumpets, they shall be for you a hukat. We don't know what huk is, okay? That's a Hebrew term for one of the three things that you're supposed to be. A witness is a dut. The huk is something we don't understand. And then the other one is mishpatim. And so those are judgments. So, stop signs, stop lights, those are judgments that you have to keep, mishpatim. But a huk, we don't know what that is. We just do it. And it's a huk olam, so it's a plural. These are things that you're supposed to do forever throughout your dorot, which is generations. So, well, we haven't been doing it, but we're getting better at it. Notice that we're actually trying to keep the sighted moon now. That's kind of exciting. So when you go to milchama, which is battle, in your land against the enemy that oppresses you, and you shall sound the blast on the zotzerot, and you shall be remembered. There's your remember thing, okay? Remember is imperative before Hashem Elohechem, and you shall be saved from your enemies. Okay, so what's the remember thing? Well, you're kind of remembering that you were called out of Egypt, and you're remembering that God's going to remember you in battle. So that's your teruah thing. Okay, that's what I'm getting at. That's really the main point of the video. Don't turn it off right now. We should associate a single or dual teruah with war or battle. I advise you that you should differentiate between the teruah and a vocal ruah. So what's a teruah? Well, that's a blast. What's a ruah? That's a scream. Okay, and that's what they did with Joshua 6. And so when you want to test my words out, read the actual Hebrew interlinear in Joshua 6, and you'll see it. There's a teruah, there's a ruah, there's also a yovel in there too, which is just bizarre, but it's cool. It reminds us of the ruach. So ruah is very similar to ruach. Okay, and God's Spirit. So that's Joshua 6, covers the applications and the differences. Then spend a minute in Revelation 19:1 and notice that the Tekiah Gadola is assumed. What God wants to show us here is the Ruah, the shout from heaven, similar to Joshua 6, which is going into, why am I blanking on the city of the moon? Jericho. Yeah, so that is the similar thing. Going into Jericho is kind of like going into the promised land, and there's a fight going in, and it's a Gog-Magog war. Keep that in mind. Okay, now, different opinions from different people, and nice people, and pray for these poor Beit Tehillah people. They're down in Tampa, so they're being blasted right now by the hurricane. What is Yom Teruah? One of the unique things about Yom Teruah is it's a holy day. You can't work on it, but you can cook. Okay, and so he cites off the other festivals and things like that. The name Yom Teruah provides a clue to its purpose. Teruah literally means to make a loud noise. That would be the Ruah part, but it is in there. Okay, so he is right, or she. The word describes the noise, trumpet, also describes the noise by the large gathering. So here's where he's correct. Joshua 6. Remember, I mentioned that's a good thing to test out. So when it shall come to pass, the ram's horn, that's a yovel, I think, in that case, makes a long blast. When you hear the sound of the shofar, the entire nation will shout a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall in its place, and the people shall go up as one man against it. Very interesting. Okay, so it's not really the trumpet blast that does it. Now, there is a tekiah gedola at the end, so keep that in mind. I'll read the verse from 19 in just a second here, okay? But the shout appears twice, and it's a verb form of teruah. So he is right with that. Okay, so it's a verb, and it is a shout, and that seems to be what's going on in Revelation 19. Okay, and so basically it says, you're supposed to clap your hands and shout for joy, shout to God, sing to God, shout to God, all the earth. Okay, that's fine. Good verses. Let's go to Revelation 19. After these things I heard, as it were, a kol gadol, and I'm reading the Orthodox Jewish Bible. So that's a ruah, loud voice, and the tekiah gedola, that loud final trumpet, is just assumed that it's in that mix with the loud voice. But the loud voice is really cool. Of a great multitude in heaven saying, "Praise Hashem, God." The Yeshua, when they say salvation, that's Yeshua. Okay, and the kavod, the glory, and the gevura is power, and of is Eloheinu, our God, because of emet, which is truth, and zadok, which is righteousness, are his judgments, because he judged the zona hagadola. So that is the big prostitute, okay, the great prostitute, who was corrupting the earth, and the zanut, the fornication of her, and took vengeance on her who has on her hands the blood of his servants. And again, they said, "Praise Hashem, God," and the smoke of her ascends laome. Okay, so forever and ever and ever. Okay, so, and that is also found in Isaiah 34:10, but that is from Revelation 19:1 through 3. So there's your ruah. Teruah is assumed, and it would be a tekiah. It wouldn't be. It would be a ruah and a tekiah gedola, because that's got to be the final trumpet. Okay, but that is my license to say that. It's my opinion. So let's get back into the Yom Teruah. The 6th month is Elul, the month before Tishri. Time for preparation. Begin your 40 days of repentance before Yom Kippur. 29 days the shofar is blown. And the intriguing thing is, when I mentioned this Suleiman the Magnificent, the rabbis were outside the wall blowing the shofar and blessing him as he was rebuilding the wall and sealing it for only the Messiah. So it was really cool that they were blowing the shofars those days. That was going on kind of in the background, so to speak, as his men were working. So 40 is a period of testing. We have the 48 years after Yeshua died until 70 Common Era, when the temple fell. The king is in the field during Elul, no doubt about it. But I would assume that he would still be in the field during the first 9 days of Tishri. Okay, kings aren't accessible without special request for 11 months. During Elul, though, the king comes to the field as we meet there to enter into his royal smiling face and radiant countenance. During Elul, kings leave their palaces and enter the fields to inspect the crops. During harvest time, when kings are approachable by anyone without pretenses, it's a busy time of the harvest. Kings notice who is harvesting, who is doing God's work, and who is lazy, and recording it in the books. Then the staccato war blast of the shofar is completed on Yom Teruah. It is called Rosh Hashanah, the turning of the year, and the king returns to his throne, and his judgment is affirmed during the 7 days of awe, and the doors close, and the final service on Yom Kippur. Typically, the king meets out corporate judgment after Sukkot ends. Okay, typically. Okay, and so I'm citing this Gavor word again. He has strengthened. This is that fullness of the nation. So basically, he Gavors this contract The Antichrist does, a covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of the week, he causes the sacrifice and the present to cease, and by the wing of the abominations he makes desolate. So you've got the king and the anti-king, okay, from Daniel 9:27, and so you'll have this desolation occurring. So just keep in mind that the king does what he's supposed to do during this time frame, but the anti-king, the anti-Messiah, he will strengthen, he will, the word Gavor, Gavor, I'm blanking on how it works, but it's got a he in it, so it's got a yud. And so what time is it? Well, we're in the fall, and that is the time when things would kick off for the final 7 years. That's it. Okay, and I'm not sure exactly when it would kick off, but it wasn't last night or Sunday night. Okay, so this is another opinion, and this is Yom HaKaseh. So this guy is saying there's this hiddenness of the day, and he's trying to say that this is like Psalm 81, and so I think he's confusing it, but it is an interesting thing to cite. He's citing Psalm 27:5 first, but that's Istar, that's Esther, which is, the book of Esther. And so it's really not Kisei there, but he shall hide me in his pavilion. In the secret of his tabernacle he shall hide me, he shall set me upon a rock. Good verse, but not as accurate because Kisei and Esther are different words. So Satar, and the day of hiding, hidden day coming up. They're saying it's rabbinic, okay, and so I don't think it works, because it was hidden from Hasatan. He's saying one day a year he can't accuse us, but that's actually Yom Kippur, okay, and so let's look at it in the Hebrew here. First we'll read it, then I'll show it to you in the Hebrew. For the one directing in the Gittis of the Asaph, so sing with joy unto Elohim Zenu, our strength, make a joyful noise unto Elohe Yaakov, the God of Jacob. Begin a song and bring hither a tambourine, pleasant kinnor, harp, and eva, lyre. Blow the tekiah, the shofar, at Rosh Kadesh, at the full moon, the kaseh. So that's that kaseh word on Yom HaChenu. It's a chok for Israel, so that's that thing that you're supposed to do, but you don't know why. And the mishpat for Elohe Yaakov, so yes, the God of Jacob. He ordained Yosef for an adut, that is to witness this. Okay, so Joseph, you could say maybe is the believers of the Gentiles are the witnesses. When he went out over Eretz Mitzrayim, over Israel, where a language of one not known did I hear. So Psalm 81. It's an interesting idea that it's the hidden day, and that's why you'll see it listed more by other guys. So I'll show you that in a little bit. So once again, here's another opinion, and I wanted to show you Kaseh. So below the blue arrow in kind of the middle of the page here, you'll see the full moon Kaseh from Psalm 81. It's interesting, but I'm going to say it's the full moon, like this guy is saying. And I don't know exactly why the full moon, but basically what the article on the left-hand side from Natan Lawrence is basically saying is he's not a conjunctionist, I'm not a conjunctionist. And so the hidden part would be, we'll call it Kaseh for the new moon instead of the full moon, because you don't know when that new moon is going to kick off and you'll see the sliver. That's a stretch, guys, okay? And so conjunctionists cause problems where there's kind of a dark period of the moon, so there may be parts of 3 days, and that would be a confusing time. Whereas when you sight the moon, the new moon, the sliver of it, and we just did. So new moons are sighted by the sliver. That's my opinion. I'm not a conjunctionist. So this is an interesting article, but once again, I'm agreeing with the guy that you don't want to be a conjunctionist. You don't want to go that direction, and many of the rabbis would rather go that direction. Okay, because it protects their calculated calendar. Okay, so this is weird. I just want to throw this out because I'm having a lot of fun. And so I have this guy that I know that has etanim with vavs. It's supposed to be a yud, but etanim, 2 vavs at the end, on his arm, tattooed on his arm, and he's a believer. I thought, what does that mean? What's going on? So anyway, he was taking it from 1 Corinthians 15:52, which is interesting. So in a moment, in the wink of an eye, at the last shofar blast, the shofar will sound, the Messim, the dead ones, will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed, for it is necessary for the imperishable, or the perishable nature to be put on the perishable, imperishable, and the mortal nature to be put on the immortal. So that's G110. That is that weird that word, and so he had it tattooed on his arm. When this perishable nature puts on the imperishable, and this mortal, the immortal, 110 again, okay, and the Devar Hanava will come to pass as it stands written, he will swallow up death forever. Okay, so that is 1 Corinthians 15:52. Very interesting, and it's really a paraphrase of Isaiah 25:8. But I want to point out that it's Thanatos, it's Athanatos, that is actually written on this guy's arm. And Thanatos is death. So would be the opposite of death. And that is Tishri. So just so you're aware of it, it's kind of a weird little angle. And it comes from the Old Testament, New Testament, and I'll have to show it to you in the Greek in my next slide here, just so you can see it. So Athanato, Thanasia, okay, and Athanatos, immortality. It's an odd way of saying it, though. In the Greek, it's like you're taking the which is the opposite of Thanatos, which is the worst word in the Bible because it's death, okay? And it's used horribly in Revelation. And so it's pretty consistent that that's immortality. And the Greeks got it, but it's weird. So once again, here's the times that's listed, obviously, from 1 Corinthians 15:52 and 53, and then 1 Timothy 6:16, and then here's the weird one, 1 Kings 8:2, Etanim. Okay, so if you look at that, in the 7th month, Etanim, and that's what was typed onto this guy's arm by the tattoo artist, and we're not supposed to get tattoos, so don't do any more of them if you have any. When Shlomo assembled the Zechariah of Israel and all the Rashi Hamatot and Nisei Havavot of Bnei Israel unto the Melech Shlomo, so the king of Solomon of Jerusalem, that they might bring the ark of the covenant of God out of the city of David, which is Zion, and all the men of Israel assembled themselves into the Hamelech Shlomo, so King Solomon, at Chag Sukkot, on the month of Etanim. There you go. So there's your 7th month, which is the 7th month, which is Tishri. Very interesting way around this, but basically, so it's the month of immortality according to Paul in 1 Corinthians 15:53. Okay, just keep that in mind. So somewhere in this month, you're immortal. That would be Yom Kippur, I'm arguing. I don't think it's going to be the first day. I think it's the 10th day. But Yeshua is going to return on one of those days. One of them is going to be immortal. So just keep in mind, that's the combination between 1 Corinthians 15:52 and 53, and then also 1 Kings 8:1-2. Very interesting connection. Okay, so once again, Nehemiah Gordon. The Torah does not explicitly tell us the purpose of Yom Teruah. Its name may indicate whatever, okay? So the form of Teruah often refers to clapping your hands. Okay, fine. Shout to God. Sing to God. Shout to God of the earth. Okay, and cites the verses. Okay, great. It's Zikron. So remember, it could be memorial. As I mentioned, Nehemiah Gordon's brilliant, okay? I disagree with him at times. It went from Yom Teruah to Rosh Hashanah. There are 2 verses, I'll cite those in just a minute here, on how it flipped out to that. Interesting. So, I mean, I like to check out what he has to say. And I'll get to those verses in a little bit. So first we're going to go through Joe Good, another scholar. Keep in mind, he's pre-Torah rapture, and so he's brilliant. So he's really strong on being right and really strong on being wrong. And so he's really saying that when you get to the Great Tribulation time frame, the 2 witnesses aren't going to show up during this month. They're going to show up between Nisan 10 and Nisan 14. I totally agree with him, so I started in a blue star. And so the temple services should begin in the fall. I would agree with him there again. Okay, the 7th month, he's citing Ezra 3:1-3. I think he's right. And so here are the 2 verses that I wanted to cite of the changing of the year and in the fall. And so it's that 7th month again. So it's Exodus 34:22. You'll have a Chag Shavuot, first fruits of Ketzira, so the wheat harvest, and then the Chag Hasif, the ingathering harvest time. And she'll be at the, oh goodness, I wish I was reading it in the Hebrew, it'd be easier. Hashanah, the turning. Oh, that's it, yeah. Tekufat Hashanah, changing, turning of the year. Yep. There you go. So you know in the seventh month, it's the turning of the year. So yes, you can say Nisan Aviv is a turning of the year, but this is also a turning. And then it's more coded here. It's more difficult to see in Ezekiel 41 through 2. But in the 5th and 20th year of our Golos and Rosh Hashanah, the Yovel, the Jubilee, of the 10th day of the month in the 14th year. So he's citing the Yovel, he's showing Rosh Hashanah, the turning of the year again. And it's kind of, so this is Ezekiel 40. It really says that there is this turning time. Two witnesses that there's a turning in the fall. Otherwise, it isn't specifically stated in the Bible. Okay, so Joel is right with that. There is a turning. He's saying some of the words that are used, Rosh Hashanah, the New Year. Yeah, I mean, technically you can say that. It is a turn. Yom Teruah, yep, absolutely. HaZikron, yes, a day of remembrance. Yom haDin, Judgment Day. No, not really. It's not stated in the Torah. And it's hard to find it in the Mishnah. And we'll read the Mishnah in a minute here. Yom Kaseh, I'd say no. Okay, and then Yom Hashem, yes, it could be the day of the Lord, but I would defer that I think it's Yom Kippur, right after Yom Kippur. Yom haDin, the day of judgment, I think it's rabbinic and wrong. And so he's citing Psalm 81, and he's citing that haDin type thing. Okay, that's fine. But he is doing the research, and I applaud Joe Good for doing that. So he's got his reasons there. Then one more set of verses that talk about this time frame and the Teruah are Numbers, Leviticus 23. And we already kind of read this anyway, but it's a Zikron, Teruah, Mikrat, Kodesh, so holy rehearsal, and then no Avodah. So just so we know, and Joe Good cites that also, that this is what we're supposed to do. And then Numbers 29 talks about the same thing, that you're supposed to have that holy rehearsal, a Yom Teruah, day of the sounding of the shofar. That's pretty much all it says about it, okay, in the Bible. That's about it. And then it discusses in Numbers 29 the various offerings you're supposed to make. Okay, so getting back to Joe Good, the name given to the first of Tishri being New Year's Day in the Bible, the day of blowing a trumpet, I would say blowing Teruah, on the first day of the seventh sabbatical month. No mention is made of the day of judgment. And there's where Joe is right. There's nothing. So now I have 2-3 people that are saying there's no mention of the day of the Lord, the day of judgment. It, in the sense, time of divine judgment on the wicked is the one that will appear at the end of days. The description of the divine judgment in heaven is found in Daniel 7:9 through 10:22, where the Ancient of Days is depicted as sitting on the throne while the books are open before him. Okay, so Joe's right with that. A little bit more from him. The description is also found in apocryphal books of a specific day in the year in which God holds judgment over the world. No trace is found pre-Talmudic literature, so he cites the Mishnah, contains the first known reference of the day of judgment. It says 4 times a year, not just one, 4 times a year, the world is judged on Passover, okay, on Pentecost, on the fruits of the trees, and the New Year's Day, all men pass before him, the Lord, as an expression rendered by the Amorim, like young lambs. That's interesting. I'll cite that at the end of the video. And the Feast of Tabernacles, the decree is passed on the rain for the year. So there are the 4 times, but it doesn't really say Yom haDin for today. Okay, continuing on with Joe Good, significant events in the first 3.5 years. So things that I just wanted to cite this real quick. So temple services begin in Jerusalem. Not temple, but services probably would begin during the first 3.5 years. Disaster, yep, absolutely. False Messiah arises. No, well, not in 1 hour, yes, but not one day, and the false Messiah arises in the midpoint. You really won't notice him much. I mean, he'll do something and then kind of go behind the curtains for a while. Military treaty, yeah, first 3.5 years, first day, basically, false Messiah. War between Europe, Egypt, and Gog and Magog for 3 years. I don't think so. At the end of 3 years, Gog and Magog invade Israel. Yes, at the end. At the end of the 7 years. Israel calls on Europe to come to her aid. Europe does not, Europe's not going to be there, guys. They're just not going to be there. The halfway point, the false Messiah enters Jerusalem. Absolutely. 42 months go until Messiah returns to Jerusalem. The birth pangs. Yep. False Messiah kills the 2 witnesses on Nisan 10. I would say Nisan 14, but it could be Nisan 10. um, of 3.5 years into the Great Tribulation. So the midpoint. Israel flees to the wilderness then. Yes, yes. So the second 3.5 years, yep, he's right. Last 3.5 years deal with the nations, absolutely. War against the believers, absolutely. So Joe's strong and right on these, okay? Continuing on with Joe Good. The end of the 6th-year final campaign begins with the Battle of Armageddon. Yeah, it's probably the 7th, but it's close. It's after the 6th year. Jerusalem is under siege. Yep, Messiah returns to Jerusalem on Yom Kippur of the 7th year. I'm going to say he nails it. Okay, then Sukkot's important. Then the wedding supper. Then the feast of Leviathan. It's biblical, people. Temple rededicated back to God on Hanukkah. I'm going to say he's probably spot on all of those. Okay. So Joe Good finishing out with him. And so basically what's going to happen is there's going to be an abomination of desolation found from Daniel 9:24 through 27. And so I'm arguing that it's the image of the beast that is the god, the idol. So it's not going to be like Antiochus, where Antiochus slaughtered a pig. I don't think they're going to be doing anything like that. But I think you're going to see some judgments and things occurring based on the mark of the beast and worshiping his Etzav, which is the idol, the image. I think that's what you see in Revelation 16:2. That's what's occurring. That's your abomination. We'll see. We'll see. I mean, I could be wrong, but Joe Good is kind of going that it's going to be similar to Antiochus Epiphanes. And I'm saying, no, it's going to be more similar to Revelation 16:2. Okay, but it's still future tense. Okay, and you're going to see the king is probably going to be in the field during that time. No, actually, it's probably going to occur during Passover. All right. So anyway, I'm saying what you should look forward to coming up here pretty soon here is Halloween, which seems to be close to Cheshvan 10, very close to it. And so in 2012, when we went through this horrible time frame of hurricane, oh goodness, I'm blanking on the name. That was part of prophecy, okay, in 2012 in New Jersey and Wall Street when it was hit. And so I'm saying that the time right now is coming up where you're going to see probably 9.5, 10 Cheshvan of 5783 is coming up, and that's going to be probably like Jeroboam's false Sukkot and false Yom Kippur. And so the thing obviously Jeroboam was part of false prophets and part of a false prophet system. I'm saying that this guy Jeffrey Grider is going to whip you into a frenzy every day of the week as we move forward. And so CNN calls it rapture anxiety. It is. And so don't listen to people that are going to whip you into a frenzy. I'm telling you, this is a long, drawn-out process. We're 7 years away, if not 8 or 9, maybe 10, 20, I don't know. But the main thing is don't go into a frenzy, people, okay? Don't listen to Jeffrey Grider and get anxious because he's made so many errant predictions already. So instead, we're in the birth pangs. We'll go into tribulation at some point in time. We'll go into the Great Tribulation. I don't know when Judgment Day is, but it is in 2022. Okay, and Yom Kippur, the Day of Judgment, covered by the Lamb's blood. No doubt about it. So we're approaching, what time is it? Yom Kippur is coming up. Okay, the actual date, cited moon date, 10 days from now. And so he is the covering. He is the blood covering, just like in Egypt, just like with the Akedah, which would be Abraham sacrificing Isaac almost, And so he is our Yom Kippur, which echoes over. Passover, very similar to that. And I want to cite on the top here, this elderly woman was shot by a radical pro-death liberal for handing out pro-life literature. Okay, that is covered by Yeshua's blood. And so that's instant grace from God. Okay, she was doing God's work. Okay, and so that's part of it. And there's going to be a lot more of that. So what time is it? It's time when certain people are going to die, tragic deaths, but she was doing the right thing. So get your garments clean. She had clean garments. Okay, she had clean garments for the wedding. Okay, and so keep that in mind. Thank you very much for your time, and have a blessed Hag Sameach for Yom Teruah. Be blessed. Bye.